and especially
Yeah.
controlling the narrative.
Yes. Yes. So let's do that. Hey, Facebook. Good morning.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, we're happy you are joining the Veteran Impact Show. We broadcast live on Facebook. We'll also be on YouTube. We'll be on DBTV. We're going to be out there on.
Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where we continue the mission of highlighting veterans and service organizations who continue to serve our community and our nation. We're brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy. Welcome aboard. I got to tell you, we got a great program and you've got a great friend coming on board with us today.
Yeah, this
Another
is a lot
Marine.
Of one of my favorite Marines, and very appropriate as June is largely considered female veteran month.
I got to tell you,
yeah, we are wrapping up with one of my favorite Marines.
I think that is tremendous. Well, let's introduce Maggy. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So we introduce you as saying you're a Marine. Tell us a little bit about what you did in the Marine Corps.
Well, I was an precision measurement equipment repair technician. So I was in the air wing, which was a really good thing for me. And I repaired the equipment, everything hydraulic, pneumatic, digital, and analog, all the test equipment that they used to repair the planes and the helicopters that we had there at Camp Pendleton. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. I was in school for a very long time to learn how to do that. And, it was a great job.
I got to tell you, man, having flown in some of those planes as flight crew, the people in the background who kept us flying, they were the most important people in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Because if something went wrong, and that was what we tried not to let happen. Well, Maggy, you have done some amazing service after you left the Marine Corps. You have brought that spirit of service with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Well, I'm currently a trustee for the Greater Dallas Veterans Foundation, and I'm also the adjutant for my American Legion Post 581 in Dallas. And so the Greater Dallas Veterans Foundation, primarily its mission has been to put on the Dallas Veterans Day Parade. But over the last few years, we've really started to expand into supporting organizations. We're not a direct service organization. We never will be. We've got a lane and we're sticking to it. And really, we're talking about connecting organizations to each other, elevating what they do. I think a lot of times organizations work in a silo, and when you're trying to raise funds or when you're trying to achieve the mission, you're just touching people, just right on the edges, within or on the edges of your silo. But when we work together and collaborate, we can really increase the impact of what we do. And go big or go home. It's Texas.
Absolutely. And Chuck, you've been so involved in so many great organizations. Don't you see, though, there's an underlying sort of competition and fear to share within some of the organizations? And so what, Maggy, you're talking about is really important.
Well, I think that we tend to be a little myopic sometimes in our arena with our military veterans. And it saddens me. We don't have a corner on the market of trauma. Trauma is trauma. First responders have it. Students. I mean, everybody encounters. If you're living a life of adventure, you encounter things that sometimes cause you to need a little bit of assistance. And so I think that when we shut ourselves off from each other, and when we say, we only service veterans from this area, we only service combat veterans, I think that absolutely there are niches that need to be served. But as a community, we need to work together. And I think that we do ourselves harm when we don't work together. We can increase our impact. And I think that if we're really trying to serve the mission of supporting our veterans, military, first responders, and their families, when I was director of the Veterans Institute for Film and Media, really trying to get that off the ground, very niche market, and we can talk about that. And I would go out and try to market it, and people say, well, I don't see how that applies to me. And I'm like, whatever, dude, that's fine. But if you say you support veterans, I don't care. Don't tell me thank you for your service. That nobody really any good. I don't care if you donate to puppies. Do you like puppies? Well, then donate to the service dog. Do you like horses? Donate to that. Are you worried about the homeless or the housing? I don't care, because ultimately it serves the mission, and the mission is to support our veterans and their families.
Absolutely. Hey, and a piece of exciting news. I'm going to tangent a little bit, but I want to start talking about all these different spokes as we continue our round silo analogy for the show. But I want to talk about a lot of you've got several spokes that you've hit on, and one of them that I'd like to start with, but I really want to come back to your work in film, is the idea. We have done a really, really good job. You ask almost anybody and they'll tell you that there are 22 veterans committing suicide every day. And you think about Tunnels to Tower, you think about the Wounded Warrior Project, and I'm talking about the supposedly nonprofit organization. Sorry, I was being a little editorial there. As opposed to the actual Wounded Warrior Regiment and the Marine Corps and the Wounded Warrior units. But one of the problems we have is, as a country, we've done a really good job, as all of them are trying to raise money. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need money. They need support. But it's left everybody with the impression that veterans are all broke and one step away from going postal at the office. And that's just not the case.
No, it's not true. And one of the things, there was a book, Stolen Valor, and I met the author, and he talks about how the media and everybody has focused on the problem situation. And I remember being at the dedication of the Vietnam deal down in Fair Park, the memorial. And I was talking with Roger Staubach and a group of veterans that I knew, and I knew Roger fairly well from real estate. And there was a group of guys, in the wild outfits and all that. And the press wanted to go talk to them. They didn't want to talk to the successful business leaders who were also veterans.
Gotcha.
And that's a big thing. The media has focused on the negative and not the positive of what people are doing. And let me tell you something. Roger Staubach built one of the best real estate companies in the nation.
Yep.
Navy veteran. One of the greatest quarterbacks that ever walked onto a football field.
Naval Academy grad, like our friend Clint Bruce.
Yeah.
And both of them played in the NFL. Roger played a little better than Clint, but Clint will make sure that I hear about that later. But
I got to tell you, given the size of Clint Bruce, I would not insult him. I wouldn't go there.
Clint, this is Jim Blythe talking to you right now. Okay, we're having some fun, but I want to get back to one of the points that you're making, Maggie, and I think it's a really important point. You talk about collaboration. So talk a little bit about the mission of the Dallas Veteran Foundation, and then how you guys are trying to grow that, expand that to be a connector in the space.
Okay, so for example, last fall, the foundation had a mental health symposium where we brought veterans, first responders, and educators together to talk about, because you talk about 22 veterans a day. I think it's dropped a little bit, but we have a real crisis in this nationwide, but worldwide. I mean, when you start looking at the statistics and you start talking about what is happening out there with mental health, and so we need to control the narrative a little bit, and we need to link people. So that's what the foundation is really working on. So for example, we had the mental health symposium. We're doing we're working with Parker University to do an event on July 27th. Again, we'll bring in different veteran organizations and veterans themselves to kind of talk about what Parker's doing, what we're doing, take them to look at the facility, go up to the STAR. They've got a really great facility up there, Brain Institute. So, there's a lot of really good work happening. I'm all about, connecting. I'm in a really, lucky place because I don't have to pay for myself. I'm a volunteer and have always been a volunteer. And it's just really great when you can put people in the same room together talking about the same issue from different perspectives. And so for me, what I really like to see is what are you seeing in your population? What are your best practices to serve those populations, and how can we export that, or take pieces of it to work within different populations? So for example, our indigenous peoples have really great ceremonies that they do to help welcome their warriors back into their community. And I think that there's just some different ways that we can look at that. Is how do we transition these folks out of the military and do it consistently and in a healthy way to get them back producing into society, to make that transition back into being a veteran in a civilian society.
One of the things that you kind of alluded to and went around to make a point, I'd like to come back. A lot of people don't realize, and it gets hidden in the message, that veterans in this country have always led the way. When you go back after World War II, it was veterans who organized using military leadership techniques. And veterans, one of the things most people don't realize is the VA healthcare system, 70% of all of your medical professionals train in the VA. All of these things lead the way. So you made a point, Maggie, about look at nationally, look at worldwide, global, the epidemic of suicide. It's not just the military.
No.
And by developing these programs and working in what you said, we're going to be able to take this out as a way to help the nation and the world as a whole. And I think that's critically important. And a lot of people go, "Oh, how could you do that?" Let me tell you something. We've been doing it for years.
And
well, that's one of the things that I, like the American Legion, until I became a Legionnaire, I don't think I really understood what they do. And I think a lot of folks don't understand. There's great groups. We've mentioned a few: Wounded Warriors, American Legion, any of the service groups. But we need to, as veterans, lead the way for our nation again. Just continue to serve. I mean, I learned service in the military. That really. I didn't know what it was to be an American. I didn't know what it was to serve my community, and coming out of the Marine Corps, that was what I took out of the Marine Corps. And so when we're looking at trying to build a society that is accepting and equitable for all, when we can partner people together so that people understand where somebody else is coming from. And I think veterans are a great resource for our students, especially to say, stay the course. This is, I know it's tough right now, but it just breathe in, breathe out. Here's some things. Here's some art classes you could do. Here's yoga. Here's the horses. Here's the here's the doggies, whatever it is that go fishing, go shoot hogs out of a helicopter. What is it that will help you, process this? And like I say, is I'm really looking to try to build a partnership in conjunction with Carry the Load and their educational program with our schools here in the Metroplex, and saying, every school should have some sort of civic engagement. I'd love to see some sort of a big brother, big sister program with veterans and students. So, I dream big, and I keep chipping away at it.
And that's the kind of thing that Charlie Mike attitude, which when we met back the last time pre-COVID, when we did the Dallas Veteran Film Festival, which was phenomenal. And I've got a story I want to share in another segment about that. With our friend from Creative Vets, Richard. What was Richard? None of them.
Richard Casper. They're not.
Yes, I always forget his last name. I don't know why. But some of the things that you've done, and you are just natural. I think our listeners can see it already. You are effervescent. You don't let anything get in your way, and you are such a great example of the positive side. And speaking of which, I wanted to share a piece of trivia. I'm not sure if we shared this last week, but according to the VA, Texas is officially the #1 state for veteran population in the United States now. We have surpassed California.
And they're all coming here.
And they're all coming here. A lot of them are coming here. Well, it's the cost of living in California is keeping a lot of our veterans from enjoying the lifestyle that they would like. But face it, we have a lot of military bases here, and the guys come here, guys and girls, I use the term generically. They come here, they get a chance to see Texas, and they want to stay. It's amazing how many of them want to stay. But the reason, one of the things about that I wanted to mention, the point that I was trying to get to in my usual long-winded way, is that veterans have a higher median income than non-veterans. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Mm-hmm. Veteran businesses go out of business. One of the problems with starting your own business is they tend to fail. And that's an unfortunate, it's kind of like people talk about
it's
marriage.
Across the board.
Half of them don't make it.
90% of the startup
businesses, veteran businesses are failing at about a 30% rate. And one of them is, and Maggie, you exemplify this so well, attitude.
Tenacious. We are tenacious.
There we go. You got to like that.
And these are leadership skills that you learn in the military. And I would make a point, too, to a lot of people don't realize, if you want to get stronger, you go to the gym and you work out, right? And you don't lift 10 pounds. You start working where you can, and you work up and you work up and you work up. The stronger you get is because the more challenging it gets. And I do believe that we have challenges, and it's not just, Maggie, you made this point, it's just not the military. My wife, Diane, mother of 3 children, there was a point in time that I'm sure she's had PTS, something fierce. We laugh about that. But how many people do you know also, and I've known quite a few, that have gotten in terrible automobile accidents or family circumstances that are terrible? These challenges, you have to have the grit and the guts to stand up and do what has to be done. And that's where I see a lot of things lacking right now, that the military can lead and train and teach.
It really is sad. And one of the problems we have is our military is shrinking. You go back to my dad's generation, and you're talking about 20-30% of that generation served. We're down to less than 1% right now. And the veteran population continues to fall and fall and fall. So veterans have less of an opportunity to make an impact just because there's fewer of us out there. But here we are, and we'll kind of go esoteric for just a second in our last minute of this segment. But we are more connected. Here we are. You're at home broadcasting. We're broadcasting internationally. I think there's a couple extraterrestrials that are picking us up and have come to be fans of the show, because when they type in comments, nobody can read them. We haven't broken the code on that language. But the point that I'm making is, here we are at a point in time when the world has never been more interconnected. And yet people feel so amazingly isolated.
Disconnected. Yeah. I tell you what, let's talk more about that when we come back from all of our messages from all of our partners. So I want to say thank you to Fairway. Thank you to your company, Chuck, and all you guys do to help us. So thank you for being on board. You're listening to the Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. Stay with us, join us, tune in, subscribe, be a part. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Hey, welcome back. Man, we've got some great comments, and Jordan Levy, my wife, was just pointing out, welcome aboard. Thank you. Chuck, we've been talking with Maggie. Why don't you reintroduce Maggie real quick for those who just joined us?
So, Maggy Croxville, did I say that right?
Croxville.
Croxville. I have always wanted to ask you how to pronounce that, and I promise you I will continue to screw it up because I never do get it right.
Well, now, wait a minute. Crowville is Cajun.
Well, it's Croxville. There's some debate about origins and that hard X against that V. Is it, for us? Anyway, I think it's a made up name. I think we finally decided that somebody invented it like 3 generations ago. But it's people trying to make it pretty, but it's not. It's just Croxville.
Croxville. There we go.
Just like it's
Marine veteran Maggy Croxville. who has been involved in multiple projects here in the Dallas area. Talk about, and you referenced it earlier, and you've got a project that you were working on with the Medal of Honor Museum. And let's talk about that for just a second. If our listeners don't know, we are currently in the process in Arlington, Texas, of building an absolutely beautiful state-of-the-art Medal of Honor Museum. And we have, and I was actually at a Medal of Honor event, and I heard 63 and 65. We have a number of living Medal of Honor recipients, and I'm proud to say I've met 10 or 12 of those fine gentlemen. But talk a little bit about this project that you want to do as you want to bring more awareness, especially to our kids.
So I've been working on a project for a couple of years, and I'm hoping that it will come to fruition in the spring of 2024. We're bringing the scale replica of the Vietnam Memorial to Arlington, and surrounding that, really bringing in the students and working with them both before and during the event. And it's called the Stronger Together Showcase, and it's really to highlight the depth and breadth of services that we have here in the Metroplex to keep our warriors healthy in body, mind, and spirit. And so we want to engage with the kids with that. And a huge part of that, as I mentioned earlier, is we are a video-based society. Our students are a video-based society. And like I say, is we are very, very connected at this point in time technologically. And so how do we get the kids interested in capturing the stories of those who serve? And so I met with the Medal of Honor Museum, and they're being very supportive of this event to say, okay, we have very few Medal of Honor recipients, making sure that those stories are captured. And so one of the things that they're doing, a little bit like the Shoah Foundation and the Titanic Museum and other places, is putting these, getting these interviews done in such a way that they become interactive. And so it's 3D, so that people in the future, more than just going to the Library of Congress and pulling out and seeing things, they can actually interact with these Medal of Honor recipients because of the way that you record the film, the way that you record it. So I want to get the students involved in that and expand it beyond Medal of Honor recipients, because so many of us have served, so many of us have different stories. And if you're a kid sitting in, Bayfield, Colorado, and you're thinking about joining the military, and you're just hearing stories of heroes, that's very inspiring. And, but the vast majority of us serve in anonymity, right? But we have real stories about, why did you join the military? What did you learn in the military? How did that help you in your, in your future endeavors? And to get those kinds of stories out, captured, and make those one-on-one connections with our younger citizens, I think is imperative to building a democracy that works for all of us.
Man, I think you're right on.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things that you were talking about is we are in this era of diversity, inclusion, and
equity.
Equity. That's the word. I was like going, what was the other one? What most
Which is
people
different from equality. Equality is different from equity. So
this is true. This is true. But one of the things that a lot of people don't understand, we tend to think of this in terms of groups, and we've been beat over the head with, is it male versus female? Is it black versus white versus brown versus yellow? We've got some polka dotted people. If anybody have ever met the Irish, lots of them are polka dotted. I say that to laugh, but it is something we need to laugh at. What people don't realize is, one, veterans are legally, officially part of that group. We are whatever it is, and there's a term for it, and I always forget it. But we are an excluded group, and so we need to be.
We are a minority.
We're considered a minority. But here's the thing: in the veteran space, we wrote the book on inclusion. Absolutely, and I am still convinced to this day, nothing had a greater impact on the civil rights movement back in the 60s. And I know about it mostly through Discovery Channel and history and all of that. But it was our veterans. It was men serving with each other. It was groups like the 442nd. They were the Rainbow. They called them the Rainbow Division, but they were really a regiment. They were from Hawaii. They were all Asian. They served in Italy, and to this day are still the most decorated regiment in all of the military, the most decorated unit in all of the military.
And I'll tell you the other thing too, and you're talking about this, put the Tuskegee Airmen up front. I mean,
absolutely,
without a doubt, they changed everything for a lot of people.
And Lisa has made a comment about a gumbo to add a little spice, and I'm not sure if she's talking about Maggy's last name or if she's talking about all of our veterans. So, Lisa, you really want to throw us
I got to tell you,
there.
and there is a lot of spice with all of our veterans because we all stand up and go, Yahoo!
Yes.
I got to tell you, this is a great conversation, Chuck, and we're going to be coming back in just a minute after the words from all of our partners. I want to say a special thank you to Fairway Independent Mortgage, my company that I work for, doing specialty loans for seniors and helping out reverse mortgage lending. My NMLS number is 311548, and our corporate one is 2289. I had to get the legal stuff out of the way.
Got to keep those lawyers happy.
Bet,
Lisa, couldn't agree with you more. I want to do a quick shout out to Nathaniel Smith of Ascend Podcast. The young man does incredible work, and our producer here, and the lovely Mrs. Diane Blythe, who puts up with all of our nonsense. And we are going to be right back.
Nailed it. You did it. Wow.
Nailed it.
Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. Man, I tell you what, we're just having a little too much fun today.
We are. And I have been corrected.
How's that?
It's Ascend Podcasting.
Oh, okay. Well, Nathaniel,
sorry,
you
Nathaniel.
need to meet Maggie because you guys could work together.
Oh,
and that's what connection is all about. And that's what we're all about. We're very thankful for all the people that are joining in on our conversation today. Really, really appreciate that. I gotta say though, Maggie, you the epitomize. I really enjoyed getting to know you. You've got energy that is just boundless. Plus, you're seeing a problem, take the field, win it, and get it done. And so I want to say thank you for that. And some of the things you're talking about, though, the stories of the everyday person, those are the stories that really have gotten lost, aren't they?
I think they really are. And I think that what's interesting is a lot of veterans think that they don't have a story. Like when, I'm trying to record, I'm saying, hey, will you sit down with me and tell me your story? They're like, I don't have a story. I joined the military for this reason or whatever. I'm like, that's the story. There's a million, there's billions of lives to be read and there's billions of reasons to join the military. And people need to hear, why is it, that you join the military? I did it to basically save my life. I was raised overseas. My parents, right before my dad retired, decided to, come back to the United States. And so we were going home and they took me to Odessa, Texas, and nothing necessarily against Odessa, Texas. But, when you've lived all over the world and are used to a lot of diversity and that sort of thing, it's not exactly a hot spot for culture, especially not in the late 70s. And so, I went to college for a while and that didn't really stick. And I just thought, my life is going nowhere. I don't know what I want to do. I've got to get out of here somehow. Right. And the Marine Corps seemed like the answer. They have the best uniforms. They are in every climb and place. And what your recruiter fails to tell you multiple things, but what he failed to tell me was at the time I joined the Marine Corps, there were only 2 women Marines overseas, and they were both on embassy duty, and I would have had to have been an MP to even do that, and that was not what I wanted to do. And so, and it was the first best decision I ever made in my life. It changed the course of my life. It made me grow up. It was a lot of fun, except when it wasn't. And like I said earlier, I in my late teens and early 20s, I didn't have to decide where to go, what to do, what to wear. Somebody told me to do that. And
very cool stuff. And 2 things there, Maggie. One, if you're going to be a bear, you may as well be a grizzly.
Yeah.
And the worst of times were the best of times. To the point you were making, it was fun, except when it wasn't fun. But it's funny how now a lot of the stories when we attend reunions and things like that, or we get together as vets, and I've made this comment. I swear veterans can sense each other. They can smell each other in a room. And you go into a room of a bunch of people, and we've all been there at some kind of event, and a lot of people don't really know each other. You'll find a group having way too much fun off in one corner, and 9 times out of 10, that's a group of veterans who never knew each other. But as the great line from the Clint Eastwood movie goes, we certainly have eaten some of the same dirt.
Boy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Diane will tell you,
please with it. So,
and that's really true, because Diane and I go to a lot of events. And I remember one time I looked over and I saw this guy, and I walked over to him and I said, "You were a Marine Corps officer, weren't you?" And the guy looked at me and he goes, "Well, yeah, how'd you know?" And I said, the way you carry yourself and the way you stand there, you are very, very obvious. And I was Navy, and I said, you had to be through.
You were Navy, and you went over to salute him.
Yeah, I just
I love it,
man.
I love
Let me
it.
tell you.
Hey, you know what a Marine's pronouns are, don't you?
No, what are the Marines?
I know what the adjectives are.
Let's not get into those.
Okay. Family show.
No, they're rich and good looking. Oh, wait, those are the pronouns we want them to be.
I thought that was the Air Force. No, it's so funny.
No, they're the ones with the biggest watch, and never mind.
Yeah. It's so
You
funny.
know, Maggie.
My husband's a Marine Corps veteran too. And we had some workers over at the house, and he came, and he just kind of saw, he couldn't hear me, but he could see me talking to these people. He goes, "Why did they make you mad? What were you saying to them? Because you were obviously telling them off because they were getting the blade hand, Oh
yeah, gotta have knife hand.
Yeah,
General Mattis made knife hand famous around the world.
Yeah.
But that goes back to my buddy Tom Medina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I said,
Maggie, you mentioned your husband was also a Marine. Now tell the story about where you guys got married.
We actually got married at the Barrymore Chapel at the end of the flight line at Camp Pendleton. Absolutely beautiful facility, and we married there. It was a small wedding on a Friday afternoon, so all my buddies could get off work. And I can't remember what year it was, they had the big floods and the chapel washed away. And it washed away. And then the best man maid of honor had gotten married, and they'd gotten divorced. And so I kept telling my husband, I think that null and voids our marriage, but here we are. And so, Chuck, you actually helped me. What was that? 4 years ago for our 30th wedding.
Right in the middle of COVID.
Right in the middle of COVID. My husband and I took a trip back out to San Diego. Chuck helped us get onto the base at Pendleton. We got to go spend some time at the chapel, and they had rebuilt it. And what was really interesting is, we were there, and and memory's a funny thing, right? And I was like, something's not quite right. Well, when the flood came, it just washed like all the stained glass windows they had, and they didn't know where they went. And so they just kind of put them back. So there's a little room where I had gotten ready for the wedding, kind of back off the side of the chapel, and the window there, it was a picture of Jesus, and it's my husband's favorite picture of me in front of the stained glass window. And I was like, it's not right. It's now King David. So they put the windows back in the wrong place. and it was just kind of, but it's just a beautiful facility. And I, have great memories of riding horses out there. And
I've never told you this, but my little brother, who will retire at the end of this year from the Marine Corps, 30 something years of service, he and his wife were married there too. And it was so funny.
Beautiful.
And I think I'm cleared hot to tell this story. Hopefully I am. I was his best man, and as he's coming down the aisle, his now father-in-law, Jesus, and they are first generation Americans. His brother-in-law was a federale in Mexico and literally had to leave Mexico. This is a legitimate asylum claim because the cartel put a hit out on it.
Wow.
And they came to America. They are all American citizens now. They are phenomenal people. But to say they are rugged looking would be an understatement. And Jesus had been a boxer, but as he's coming down the aisle, he's got his sunglasses on. The future's so bright, he's wearing his shades indoors. And my brother leans down to me and goes, "Oh my God, I'm marrying into the Mexican mob." We have had the best laugh about that, and I absolutely love them. They are a family. And speaking of the worst of times, sadly, Juan's son, Jesus's grandson, was killed in a car wreck. And what a fine young man. He was an honor student. But yes, I can remember I did a toast after the wedding, and I actually had the bartender there help me because English is my second language. I struggle with languages. And I did a toast to them, and I did part of it in Spanish. And these are very stern looking men, you know, and it's, you don't show your emotions in public. It's part of that generation. And you know, it's the great line from True Lies when when Tom Arnold looks at Arnie and goes, "Dude, you got to get in touch with your feminine side." I can cry in public, but they can't. But the point was, as I'm doing this toast, I'm getting almost like a glare, and their arms are crossed. And I go over to my now brand new sister-in-law, who Aunt Norma is incredible. We love her to death. But I said, "Oh my God, I think I've set our family relations back a decade." And she starts laughing. And she said, "No, they're really touched, but they're afraid to show any emotion, especially, and we're surrounded by Marines in dress blues." And it just this really funny but very poignant family moment. And I've kind of gone down a weird tangent that has all expanded off the fact that y'all were married in the same church, and it is a great facility.
It is. I'm so glad they restored it. And
Yeah.
there's, you know, those old buildings, you know, they're on the Mission Trail. They're hard, very expensive to maintain. So if you want to give to a good cause, you know, Pendleton is just such an amazing facility, and the Marine Corps is so blessed that was, you know, granted to them, and left, the family had left that to the ranch to them. But it's beautiful. So go out and visit, make a donation, preserve the building.
Absolutely.
It's any way you can support Marines. I'm all for that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of great,
Marines especially.
And since we've done that, I want to do a quick commercial for the Marine Corps Museum that is out in Quantico. And speaking of which, on the hill above the museum itself is a small chapel, beautiful stained glass. I really do think they patterned it after the one at Camp Pendleton, but it is an absolutely gorgeous facility. This time when we go out, we're going to try to go up. The Army, seeing the Marines throw down the gauntlet and creating probably one of the finest military museums in the country. They have built one at Fort Belvoir, which is just north. We're going to try to go see that. But we have some phenomenal military museums, and absolutely encourage people to go to those. Take your kids, take your grandkids. And this is the power as my generation starts to get a little bit older, and a lot of us, but not me yet, have grandkids. Grandchildren and grandparents have a common enemy. It's the parent.
Yeah.
But there's a bond there. There is a connection. And grandparents, if you want to do something really powerful, you are the first line of education to help your grandkids understand the importance of civic pride. We need to start going back to, we've been, and Jim and I, we're going to go into that part of the show. One of the things that we created the show about, one of the things about Charlie Mike, is restoring the feeling that Americans have for this great country. And we have spent we've spent most of this century tearing each other and tearing the country down. Stop it. This is an incredible country.
You bet.
Stop doing that and start looking at what's right. We have made such incredible advances. They want to convince people this is one of the most racist countries on the planet. Trust me, go to Asia. You will see real racism. We have such an inclusive country. And this does not mean, and let me make sure This is very much part of Maggy's mission, part of our mission. This doesn't mean, oh, we don't have to do anything else. This doesn't mean there's nothing to fix. Excellence is not a destination. It is a journey. And we will need to continue to work to make it better and better and better so that everybody has access to opportunity.
Well, the thing is, and when I tell my adult sons, you've got to be involved. I mean, I get frustrated. He says I'm high energy. When we say go, let's go. And it's very difficult for me to slow down and let meet people where they are. But my kids are like, what you don't. I used to teach an enrichment class for Prosper Elementary students on ancient Egypt. And one of my favorite things is when we started introducing that is to draw the timeline. Here's when the pyramids were built. Here's when Jesus was born. Here's when America was discovered. Here's when we saw, and here we are. We're a very, very young civilization. We're a very, very young nation. And, the democracy, it's an experiment. This is an experiment in democracy. And I have lived all over the world, and there's no place that I would rather live because I'm an outlier. There's a lot of socialist or social democracies and that kind of stuff that if you're part of the pod, you're going to get along just fine. But if you're an outlier, you're going to struggle. And America is a civilization of outliers. We value independence, but if you want it to change, then you have to get involved and you have to work the process. And I'm a big questioner. I always, why is it that way? And how can we change it? And I've got an idea and that kind of stuff. And so get involved, go to the school board meetings, go to the city council meetings. What are you doing to make a difference beyond, going down rabbit holes online and complaining about it? Get out there, get out of your head, get out of your bed, go out into your community and make a difference. If you volunteer, you're going to get, so much more back.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
I couldn't agree. I'm with you guys.
Yeah, and the stories that you hear. I mean, somebody told me the other day. I actually told my husband about. I remember Maggie did blah 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 blah, and that made all the difference in my life. And I didn't even remember it. It was an incident I didn't even remember. But that's the difference that you make. Is quit bitching. Sorry, and get out there and do something. Be the change that you want to see, because we can change it. And never, just because it's bad doesn't mean it's not better. And just because it's better doesn't mean it can't go.
And no matter what happens, mistakes are made along the way. And we learn from those mistakes. Without a doubt, we learn from those mistakes. I think we're a better nation today. But when you talk about other countries, Diane and I had the chance to speak to a Bible men's fellowship group that was all East Africans. They were from Kenya. They were from Nairobi. They were from Eastern Africa or Western Africa. And they were all lawyers and doctors and professionals. And they'd all come to the United States for an opportunity, for a new life, and came from Africa. And they felt so included in this nation. These were not African Americans. These were Africans. It was hard to understand some of what they said. But I got to tell you, that was the most spirit-filled group of people I have ever been around. And you talk about sing the national anthem, man, they were all over it. It was fantastic. I think you're right. You got to get out there. You got to be a part.
Well, as soon as your knee's better, we're going to get you out there.
I'm doing the best I can, and some real good drugs. Thank you, Dr. Cole. It's helping me. Hey, I'm having a great time. We got one more good segment, then we're going to bring this program back into the dock. Maggie, thank you for being on board. Stay with us, and we'll answer more questions that are coming up. Thank you for being part of the Veterans Impact Show. Chuck, you did such a good job. Take us out again. You did good last time.
Yes, let me do that. We are here. We are Charlie Miking our way through continuing the mission. But speaking of sharing stories, this is the Maggy Croxville story, and it is an incredible story. I'm over here laughing and chuckling, and I love hanging out with Maggy. So
welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show, and thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. I got to tell you, great day. We're about to bring this program back into the dock, and it's been absolutely fabulous. Maggie, I learned so much, and just being around you, I feel about 10 times better. I think I'll be able to go out and run track this afternoon.
All right.
Your energy just is explosive, and that's great.
Infusive.
Yeah.
It's infusive.
One of the points you made, and this is where I want to encourage you to tell the stories. My father-in-law was a B-24 pilot, and he flew a plane to Africa, to Italy. And then they gave him orders to come back to the States to train to be a B-29 pilot. Well, by the time he got the B-29 training, the war was over.
Mhm.
So they gave him the option, and he went back to college, went to SMU. He was there same time my dad was. Harry never felt like he really served in World War II. And I was on an aircraft carrier in Vietnam, and I never felt like I was in Vietnam because I wasn't in country.
Mhm.
I didn't experience what those guys did.
And this is what Maggie was talking about.
Exactly.
Every veteran's got a story. And Maggie, we'll talk about it since we are in Women's Veterans Month as we continue that identity politics that I hate, but we won't go there. I've already been political enough on the show. But one of the things that I have heard, and I'm sure you have too, and I'd like you to talk about this a little bit, so many women veterans have that same, hey, I didn't feel like I really served. I don't want to talk about it. It's insane. How do we fight this?
Well, I think we fight it, first of all, within the community itself, by being welcoming and opening and recognizing that unbroken chain of service. Again, that everybody has a role to play, that
Right.
that you couldn't have done what you did if I hadn't done what I did. And then that's just the facts all the way down the line since the beginning of warriors. And I think, as a woman veteran, I never really thought of myself as separate. And of course, we just had Women's Veterans Day or Women's Veterans Day, and that's created a lot of confusion. But it's not necessarily a different day to recognize women veterans. It's a different day to recognize women obtaining the right
Mm-hmm.
to serve, or the permission to serve from Congress. And that's what that day is about. And for me, Veterans Day is Veterans Day for all of us. That, again, if you talk about equitable and inclusion, the military response to that. But the other thing is education, just like we have to, education in the wider audience. For example, I was traveling the other day, and I was in an airport, and I was grabbing something to eat, and there were two lines, and my server, I ordered what I ordered, and he went away to fix it. And then the guy, the woman a man took my order, a woman took this man's order who was next to me, and she asked him, are you a veteran? And he was like, well, yes, I am. And so she gives him a discount. And I'm like, dude, she serves too. Why didn't you ask me? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, I go to Lowe's, I park in the veteran parking space. Yippee-ki-yay, thank you, Lowe's. And I have people look at me, and I'm like, don't even, and we have that, she serves too. And so we just have to do a better job of educating. And I think as women, we need to talk about what it looks like in service and our experiences in service. And I think, one of the things when I got in, as a Cold War warrior, and I've been out of the military for a very long time, when I got involved in the veteran arena, I really wanted to learn, what are the veterans today facing? It's different. We've been at war for 20 years. What does that look like? And so you go and get educated, and especially talking to a lot of women veterans, they had very different experiences than I did. And, some of it's very disturbing. I mean, MST is a real thing, and it is, and it's not just women who suffer from that or traumatized by that. But, we have to be able to talk about these things and bring them out in the open, at least within our community. And then we have to educate the wider community and saying, this is the reality of service. And nobody goes, everybody has changed through their service. Some are changed differently. Just tell the everyday stories. what did that look like for you? What can I learn from that? What would it maybe look like for me if I was in the military? What are some pitfalls? I mean, it's like a mentoring thing. It's mentoring people that maybe you don't even know, by sharing your stories, that somebody somewhere is going to find a nugget, and you never know when you're going to
Right.
make a huge difference in someone's life. Just
Absolutely.
by putting yourself out there and being open.
I got to tell you, there are so many opportunities too. And if we focus on the negative, we're going to forget about the positives and the leadership lessons you learned, leadership lessons I learned. And Chuck, he didn't learn those. I'm kidding. But
if they weren't written in crayon, I don't remember them.
But I got to tell you, there are fabulous experiences. And I'm going to be going to the reunion of my squadron here in October. And I can't wait to be with those guys. And it was really great. So, Maggie, we bring this program to a close with a prayer. So I would like to lead us in prayer. Lord God, King of the universe, we thank you so much for all you do for this nation and all you do to protect our active duty military, our first responders who run into the fire instead of away from the fire to protect and save us. Thank you, God, for those people. And thank you, God, for all of our veterans who have been in the fire and are here to lead and pull this nation back together. God, we pray that you will provide revival and strength and pull us together, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Amen. Hey, and we've still got a minute left.
Well, here goes the music. But Maggie, this has been a wonderful experience having you on board. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope to get to know you. I'm a member of the VFW down in Frisco, just south of you. And I got to tell you, those organizations are great. Telling everybody to get involved. It's important.
Join the American Legion, join your VFW, just get out there and get involved, volunteer.
Absolutely. And that's how you continue the mission.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, we appreciate it. We're kind of vamping here.
Yeah.
You went,
yeah.
Chuck's speechless. Oh my goodness.
I know. It's like, well, and the one thing, since I've got about 20 seconds, as you were talking about that, and Jim was talking about his father-in-law, and I was thinking about the WASP program, the female pilots who were ferrying aircraft in World War II. And one of the most prominent ladies is now 3 generations of pilots and female pilots in her family.
Well, we need to get interview with her. Have a great day.
We're out.
You too. Have a good one.